Okay, we're now live with first Tech Talks of the spring quarter, where we are talking about a pretty cool service called Pressbooks. We've talked about OERs plenty of times in the past, and it ebbs and flows in interest over time. But what I've found is that for most people, like the idea of building an OER from scratch is just so overwhelming. It's so much work. Just ain't nobody got time for that, right? But one of the things that is nice about Pressbooks is, in addition to allowing you to create new OER content, it also makes it really easy to adopt existing OER content. And then, Nick, you wrote the description for this one. I think you call it like remixing content.
Yes, exactly. No, and thank you for the intro. We have this great opportunity, like Caleb said. So I think we'll probably start with why we have access to Pressbooks right now. And that is kind of like there's a time constraint to that, but then how you might use, say, their extensive library to kind of bring things together. We'll talk about a little bit about what the actual editing side of Pressbooks looks like, since we do have access to that. So I think without further ado, if there's no questions, I'll just dive right in. Easy peasy. So I'm going to share my screen. The first thing I'm going to be showing is actually a document. And I know that's not super exciting, but what's exciting about this document specifically is that as members of SBCTC, Washington State's Technical Colleges kind of association or group, they got access to a one-year license for Pressbooks. And so one of the things to note about this is this license allows you to create books from scratch. So isn't necessarily needed to adopt a book from Pressbooks, like integrate it into your course. And I'm going to use this book that I found in their library. Those are always open, but this is so we can do kind of the remixing part. So a good summer project, and that subscription term is going to end basically in November of this year. So yeah, basically the summer to kind of adopt a new textbook if you want, remix one, do any of the minor editing you need. And then you'll always have access to that. I know at least that's what the reps from Pressbooks have told us. You build your textbook, you create basically a domain for it. You'll have access to edit it and do whatever you need to for as long as you ever need, since you've already created your account and created that book. Once this subscription period is over, you won't be able to make new ones, but you'll still be able to adjust the ones you have. At least that's what we've been told. I know it sounds a little bit too good to be true, but so far that's been the communication, which is exciting because that means we can, build a bunch of these and then kind of keep working on them as we go.
And I think we also are hopeful that hopefully that subscription will be renewed after that trial period is over, but we haven't gotten confirmation of that yet.
Yeah,
but we can still be fairly confident that anything we create now is going to continue to be usable and accessible and editable, regardless of whether the subscription gets renewed or not.
Yeah, and I will say as you start kind of going down this this avenue or through Pressbooks, you set up an account through a specific domain. So that's our openwa.pressbooks.pub. So this link, you'll be able to actually create a college account. So an account using your SFCC, SEC email, your Outlook email. It'll allow you to create that account. You won't have to do anything other than that. And then you'll be able to basically have all the tools to make this happen. So let's start with, I think we'll jump into Pressbooks a little bit later, but right now what we're going to do is we're actually look at what Pressbooks has to offer before you even sign in, which is, I think, kind of the important part here. Pressbooks has a huge directory of openly licensed texts. Anytime somebody builds something in Pressbooks, they have the option to put it on Pressbooks' directory, which means anybody then can use it, remix it, do what they need to, or even just find it, right? If you were looking, like, for example, for an introduction to psychology book that you wanted to use that would have no cost associated with it, you could search through Pressbooks' directory to find that. So, for example, I was looking up Russian language because I figured that was a pretty niche category. And I was able to find some materials, at least under that title. The quality of these books is going to kind of, differ. You're going to have to do some looking to kind of see if it aligns with what you're trying to work into your course. So always consider that. But one of the important parts when searching is I have found, because all of these books are created by, say, faculty members, folks that are designing at other universities or colleges, being able to find a book depends a lot on how they've tagged the book, right? There's not like a quality assurance team that goes, okay, this Russian language diversity materials book or text or material is associated with Russian, it's associated with diversity material. That would have to be done by the author. And sometimes when you're like looking through the subject, and if I looked up Russian under subject, all I found was like one book because it was the only one tagged like that. So I found that sometimes the easiest way to do things is the best. And I've been searching for keywords instead, because that'll show up in the title and elsewhere in the text. Just something to note, because it has, there's 5,000 some odd books in this repository, but how well they've been tagged differs. I guess that's all I need to say there. One of the things that you can see when looking at books is their, the written language. So even though this is a Russian language text, it's meant for English learners. You can see where it's being published from. So this is Indiana University's Pressbooks instance. Sometimes you'll see just Pressbooks, and I'm not seeing any examples here, but sometimes it's just an individual has published it. They are not part of a university system. You might see that as well. But this also, depending on who the author is, will make it easy for you to contact them if you have questions about their text. Tries to kind of help you with that process. Down here on under the book, you're going to see this kind of little tree or hierarchy icon. What this tells you is whether it's an original text or whether it has already been remixed from another Pressbooks text. So if I look down further, I doubt I'll find anything in here, but if I remove, say, this search, try to find a book, it's going to open up everything. For example, this one is the first book of its kind, to say it that way. If I scroll down a little bit further, I'm hoping to see if I can find one pretty easily. Here we go. This Psychology, 2nd edition. This is not the original. This has been remixed, so something else was openly licensed, and then the authors used it to make this book. And because I know what this is, and I know, and nicely they put the publisher in here, this is an OpenStax text. So somebody took something from OpenStax and put it into Pressbooks because those are openly licensed. Maybe because they like some of Pressbooks's formatting, maybe because we can add H5P activities, which we won't really be covering today, but you could add those in as well. That's kind of one of the nice things, but this is a great example of something that is not the original, but has been remixed, and Pressbooks is telling you that. Another element is you will see if it's got H5P or interactive, basically elements within the text. So that would be like, there's knowledge checks throughout the book. In this case, we can see there's only one. I've seen some that have like 40 some odd H5P activities. It just depends on what the authors were doing. And then the last element is the current license on this text. So this just needs a CC by. Basically, you just have to attribute so basically say that Deborah, Julie, and Megan, they're the ones that really made the text. That's the only attribution that needs to be done for your version. Up here, here's one that's a non-commercial, so anybody can remix it, but you can't publish it in a way that you would benefit monetarily from. So you'll see those as well underneath. Nice thing about Pressbooks is it keeps track of that for you. So, for example, here, it's going to tell you that it's the 2nd generation of this book, remixed from the original. It will record that the old attribution as well. You'll be able to always link to the original text, or at least that's how Pressbooks has kind of been set up. So all of that to say, that's kind of the early information that you'll see before you say dive in. So for example, if I want to open this up, I would just click. It's going to open up the public link. This is the same link you would probably send to your students if you didn't even want to remix this. You just wanted to play around in there, have students read it, and so on. You'll see the table of contents. And then in this case, it's just one main body references. Sometimes you will see these broken up into basically expandable sections. So introduction to psychology could be this main section, and then underneath you would see whatever subheadings are needed. When you start reading the book, it'll probably take you to basically the first element in the table of contents. So right now we're in about this book, for the introduction, and then down here on the right, we can basically scroll through. So this is helpful if you're basically looking through the text to make sure it's going to be applicable to your course. Just making sure we're all caught up in the chat. But let's say you find a text that you really like. So let me jump out back into the Pressbooks directory, because this step always has to happen first. Find what you need in the Pressbooks directory. Then we can jump into Pressbooks, the instance, and play around with it. So let's say if I need something on exercise science, why would I do that? Who knows? No, that's my original ingredient field. Say I love Amanda Shelton's Introduction to Exercise Science for Fitness Professionals. I want to take this entire text, bring it into my Pressbooks, and start to remix it, revise it. Say there's elements I want to add, new chapters I want to add. Maybe there's things I want to take away because I'm not going to be covering in my class. I don't really want to worry about it. I can do that by just clicking in here. And I'm going to need this link. And this is how Pressbooks is going to tie this all together. So I've got Introduction to Exercise Science. I want to use it for my course, but I want to change some things. Obviously, I'm going to change the cover of the book, because I don't teach HPE 172 at Mount Hood. You know, I could do that kind of stuff. So I'm going to copy this link. And now, remember, this was that earlier document. I'm going to go to openwa.pressbooks.pub. I'm going to log in. So when I do that, so saving you the agony of watching me type, I've gone to that openwa.pressbooks.pub / I signed in, and this is the first thing that you see. So this is your Pressbooks instance. Once you start basically creating books, adapting books, all that fun stuff, you're going to see that you have a full catalog. And these are all the books I have essentially made with this account in my catalog. And you'll see those, and then you'll be able to jump in, visit the book, or visit the admin side of things, which is where you would edit, revise, and all that. So let's do this. I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to adapt a book. So when I click adapt a book, it's going to be the same as cloning a book. I'll click that, and it's just going to ask me for the source book URL. So that's that domain I just copied. So this is where I'm going to be able to bring that in. Now, one thing to note is that certain books might not have an open license. It might be non-remixable, for lack of a better term. Pressbooks will let you know when that happens. You can also check those attributions, but sometimes those can be hard to read, and sometimes certain books might not actually update that appropriately. So Pressbooks will usually tell you if there's an issue with that. That's always kind of the nice last check. Okay, I looked through the book. It seems like they're allowing for openly licensed remixing to occur. But here, Pressbooks will let you know. And if there is an issue, you can always contact the author. Usually it'll give you some contact information. Most of them kind of the nature of this. And then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to tell Pressbooks where it's going to end up. Now, this domain cannot be changed. This has to be set at this time, and it cannot be adjusted. So be very careful with what you name it, because you won't be able to change it. So for example, if I want to do, this is the one I usually use, tester for Nick. I will not be able to use that, and nobody else will be able to use that URL until I delete the book, which is a whole process. But I'm going to use that for this case so that we're not causing any issues. Once you've done that, you can clone book. If you want, you can actually even search for openly licensed text right from here. Just depends on your workflow. So I'm going to clone it. Oh, that's right, because I already used this one. Being really imaginative. I'm sure Pressbooks will send me a nasty gram for having all sorts of tester for Nick's floating around. But this process actually takes quite a while. So I do apologize while this kind of creates the target text. It'll make something within my Pressbooks instance, my catalog, that I will be able to kind of navigate. Now, as you can see, cloning parts and chapters, 4 of 89. That's going to take what we like to call in business a hot minute. It's going to be a while. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump over to one of the other texts that I've been playing around in, and I'll kind of show you what that ends up looking like, kind of what that space looks like, and then how you might import individual chapters, because that's kind of the next step. Okay, I've made this book, I've created a book from scratch, XYZ. I want to add individual items from books I've found in that directory. I can do that as well. So we'll let this just kind of think through. Now I'm going to come out here and I'm going to open a different text in a new tab. So this is one that one of our faculty at SEC is working on, just using it as an example because it is my tester right now. So when you've created a book, you're going to have the opportunity to see it in that catalog, like I said before. You can also highlight my books and you'll see a list of all the things that are currently within your Pressbooks instance. This is the one that's being made right now for us. Super exciting. But if I want to start, once again, playing around in that space, I'm going to go to Organize Book after I've selected it from under My Books or gone to my catalog and selected whatever text. When I go to Organize Book, that's going to show me all of the materials, or essentially the pages associated with the book. Remember when we were looking at that text, there was the expandable sections within. That's what they call parts. So in this case, even though it's called chapter 1, I can't speak French, but chapter 1, it's really a part to the text. And these would be considered, I guess, individual sections or chapters. And that's how you essentially would understand the way that Pressbooks is highlighting things. So if I, for example, go up here and I go and I look at the table of contents, this would be considered a part, and then this would be considered a chapter underneath that part. And I click into an individual chapter, it's what you would expect. It's a page of text with images and all that fun stuff. So that's what we're bringing in. If I come back here, you can build these things from scratch, but that's a whole nother process. It is very similar to Canvas, building a page in Canvas. So I won't go too in depth with that, since the purpose of today is remixing and bringing things in. But let's say this is what I've imported from another text. You can jump into one of these pages and it's pretty easy to say, edit the text, just like in Canvas. You would always make sure to hit save over here on the right, since it does require that manual save each time. And then you can just go back, you can say edit the next or previous chapter, but you'd always go back to organize to see that full list of items. Okay, with that being said, let's figure out how we import something in. I have an individual item that I want to bring in to this. I was looking through the Pressbooks directory, found another Spanish text in this instance. I just really liked how they did a certain chapter. I can come over to import right down here. It's over on that left-hand navigation. And under import type, I can go and I can find web page or Pressbooks web book. Once I've done that, because everything in Pressbooks in this directory has a very specific URL, I'm going to select import from URL, just like I did when I was cloning a book. And we can actually use HPE 172 as our example. I can click begin import. And what that's going to do, it's going to go through that same process, finding the book. There we go. But in this case, it's a little bit faster because it's just doing the import to an already existing site or domain, right? This is the Libre domain, And then we're in the admin controls or the creation controls. But what I can do now is I can select very specific, say, chapters or parts. And each of these has their own basically selection. You can go one by one, bring all of this in. So I want a glycogen, and obviously this is what you'd put in the French text. But I could go through and pick the things that I liked about that text one by one. And then I can select whether it's going to be front matter. So that would be like the introduction piece or part of the text, an individual chapter, and then or a part. So like they have chapter 1 body systems. That's how they do their parts. That's how it's titled. I would be able to bring that in as well. With that being said, this is what the original looked like. I can adjust as needed. Or I can just select literally everything. If I ended up deciding, wow, I've selected basically every single chapter or part in this text, I can also do that. And I can also deselect if I need to clear things out. But I would go through, and then once I'm done, I would import selection. And then if it says show imported content web, it'll give me a what do you call it, a link to go see what it all looks like once it's imported. So basically the workflow is, if you're just trying to remix, bring something in, you start in Pressbooks directory, you look for what you like, click in, read it a little bit. When you're ready, you find that domain, or basically the URL where that book is contained, you copy that, and you can either create, or I should say clone, the entire book in its entirety. It'll keep a connection to the original. So all you need to do is just start editing, remixing, doing your cool thing. Or you can take that and import it directly into an existing book. So you can see how you could piecemeal pick and choose chapters from all over the place, build this thing up. You haven't even written a single word. You've just gone through and done all this crazy stuff, created your own custom text. And then all you would need to do at the end of the day, make sure I cancel this. Are you sure you want to? Yep. Yep. Okay. Had to think through that one. But when you're ready, you can then come through here, organize, you can edit individual pages, rename them as you need, add new text, adjust how things look, new images, all that stuff, save as you go, and basically be free to do that because of the way that Pressbooks allows the sharing and remixing and basically controls those licenses. So with that, I've talked for quite a bit. I think I've breathed a couple of times, but I'm going to let some air into the room. Any questions so far? I mean, we've got only just a couple more minutes, so I don't want to overload us today, but I do want to see if anybody has any specific questions about their field, their area, how they might implement, anything like that that we can help kind of guide you with.
Well, so Nick, this is really more of a comment than a question. Like when I was at my previous institution before I came to Spokane, I was helping a English lit instructor. He wanted to adopt an OER, but he kept hitting this roadblock of he kept finding text that he really liked, but it was much too big for the class schedule that he had. He kept getting frustrated, like, I only want the first half of this textbook. I don't want the whole thing. And at that time, we didn't have an easy way to deal with that. This would make that so simple to just say, well, we want the first half of this literature textbook. And then he also had another frustration of, well, I love 90% of what's in this text, but it's missing some key authors or some key concepts that I like to address in my class, and it's not in this textbook. And that was a frustration for him. So this would also make that really easy of, well, I want to adopt this, but I want to add one extra chapter from this other source that I really like. So this is a really fantastic solution to a very common OER frustration.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. And I will say I saw in the chat, Professor Street, did I miss that SCC has a license to this site? It's not specifically SCC, it's actually SBCTC. So the entire state board for Career and Technical Colleges, I think I got that right, has a license to this until November. And once you've built something in it, you basically have permission to remix, edit, do what you need to that thing in perpetuity. So even after that license ends, as the reps have told us, you can still keep editing in that space because you've already created the domain and registered that with them. So yes, you've got a license. You should be able to remix, edit, all that fun stuff, say over the summer, kind of a natural time for us to kind of start looking at texts and thinking towards fall. And then you'll still have a couple of months in fall quarter to make your first one. And then, so I can pull a chapter, so this is Professor Street again, so I can pull a chapter of a book I like into my Canvas course, a new module or page. Yes, you can actually bring in your Pressbooks texts into Canvas. They import, I think, as SCORM files. This is something that we haven't tested out too much, as in not at all. But in theory, yes, you should be able to bring Pressbooks into Canvas. I think you can export it as, I think it's called a SCORM file. And that's
Although I think we should say most instructors that are using these textbooks are just linking into Pressbooks from Canvas. So you're using Canvas for your activities, assessments, and everything. But for the text, you're mostly linking usually chapter by chapter. Okay, week 1 module, here's a link to chapter 1 of our textbook.
Thank you, Caleb. Nick was getting a little too much in the weeds there.
And as always, if you watch this recording later and you're interested and curious about it and you want to know more, contact one of us. Nick is probably our resident expert, but Melanie and I have both also played with it a bit. And we can help you get started if that's something that you want to do.
And Caleb, do you think we'd be able to copy this link and put it on the YouTube description?
Yes, absolutely.
It's all about the subscription. Here, I'll make sure I've got it in the chat for you to post in there. But
yep,
this is
it.
all that information, how to set it up. There's information about like us as admins, what we needed to do, but all you're going to really need to do is get to that open pressbooks.pub site, sign up, and you can just start offering from there. It should take maybe 5 minutes to get that all set up, and that's been the experience when I've been working with faculty so far.
Great. Yes, I'll put that link in the video description as soon as we're done here.
Thanks, Caleb.
Well, we're about out of time here, unless we have any other questions or comments. We don't have any on YouTube right now, so.
I just had one. Thanks so much. I am not that familiar with Pressbooks, and we're sort of have a little bit of a push to encourage people to start using. So this is really helpful for me. And I wanted to know if, I know this is a little bit different from the focus, but I saw Lake Washington Tech has a really nice catalog of projects they've done with Pressbooks. Have you guys seen those with sort of open pedagogy with collaborative projects with students? I can, if you're interested, it just might be interesting for faculty also to see some of those projects they've done. I'll put that in the chat. Like another good place to get some ideas.
Awesome. I will save that link as well and put it in the YouTube description.
Oh, spectacular. Thank you.
Oh yeah, this is a good catalog. Small, but the content looks really good. Chemistry 121. Cool. Very cool.
Great. Thank you so much, Aaron. And for instructors watching this, one of the ways that they did this is they invited, so LW Tech would be their like admin account technically. So that would be their version of Caleb, Melanie, and I. If you add us, basically we can create a catalog like this when texts get finished. So we would have our own kind of footprint. Obviously not required, right? But it's basically if you want us to help with kind of getting that book out there, publishing it to the wider Pressbooks community, you can do that as well. No, that's a great resource, Aaron. Thank you so much.
Very cool. All right. Well, unless we have anything else we want to cover, that's probably it for today's Tech Talk. Nick, are we missing anything, Melanie?
No,
No, this
it's good seeing you all. Yeah,
Cool.
join this one, which is off the top of my head, gone. Caleb.
Okay, so we don't have one next week because next week is Campus Development Day.
That's what
Yep.
Student success coach, so we got.
there we go. Perfect.
Yes, the next one is on May 9th, and we will be talking to our student success coaches about what they do, who they serve, and spoiler alert, I guess, we have really impressive research and data that shows how effective they are at helping students complete their classes and retain to the following quarter. It is miles ahead of the college average, which is pretty impressive. All right, can't stop our YouTube stream, and we'll see you all next time.
See you on the next one. Bye.